Hey everybody, welcome to Alpha Flight Monday, my series of reading through issue by issue Alpha Flight, wonderful Marvel comic series that started in the 1980s and really had a life of its own. And today we're looking at Alpha Flight number 12. $1. Why so much? Special, double-sized issue. And one shall surely die. To catch you up from last week, Guardian, James MacDonald Hudson, has been lured to New York City with an offer of a job with the Roxxon Oil Company. He gets there and discovers that it's a trap. His wife has been apparently kidnapped by somebody, a mysterious evildoer. And he is set upon by Omega Flight. Omega Flight, we'll call him the evil version of Alpha Flight, made up primarily of members of Beta and Gamma Flights, which were sort of the training teams for heroes who were going to eventually join Alpha Flight when it was a Canadian superhero government group. So they have been forged into Omega Flight to get revenge on James Hudson. So obviously, bigger issue, also easily the most important issue of early Alpha Flight, outside of Alpha Flight number 1. So let's dive right in. Stan Lee presents a tale of tragedy for Canada's greatest superheroes, and one shall surely die. The place is New York City, an office residence near the World Trade Center. The time, now. And now would be 1984, July of 1984, in fact. And so we see Heather in a very upscale 80s looking apartment, very, very lacking in color. The antithesis sort of 70s and maybe 60s decorating. And she's communicating with this woman. Mrs. Hudson, you seem agitated. Isn't everything to your satisfaction? No, it bloody well isn't. I've been waiting 2 hours for my husband. When you met me at the airport, you said he'd join us here. Where is he? By the way, John Byrne, creator, chronicler, Andy Yankees, colorist, Michael Higgins, letterer, Denny O'Neil, editor, Jim Shooter, editor-in-chief. So this woman that she's dealing with is Delphine Courtney. And if you couldn't tell, she's not a good guy. And so she urges her over to this television set. I'm loving this design, by the way. Takes me back. I mean, sort of. I wasn't rich in the 80s, but you'd see it on TV and stuff. And says, well, I think there's something you'll want to see here. And a voice speaks from behind her. Hello, Heather. It's been a long time. Who in the... Oh my gosh, you. Jerry Jackson, after all these years. This is a pre-recorded tape, so I don't know if you're actually recognizing me, but I suspect you will. The last 10 years have been much kinder to you than they were to me, but considering all the time we worked in such close proximity, I should think you'd still remember. After all, how could you forget the man you betrayed? And so here we kind of get a little background. Hudson had worked for this fella, had invented this sort of a robot suit with a control helmet, and found out that they wanted to use it for military purposes. Heather kind of tipped him in on this. He manages to steal it and essentially steal the controlling helmet so they couldn't use it. And obviously, this does not bode well for Jackson's career, and he ends up being fired. So he wants revenge. He also, without the money, his wife leaves, with his children, and he tries to kill himself, very sadly, and ends up not surviving that, but lost the use of his legs. So, wow. I mean, on the one hand, you go, obviously, well, Hudson, you totally get why he did what he did. But then you go, oh, man, that's like, this guy's life pretty much is destroyed. So you kind of get why he's not real happy. And by the way, didn't like Fig Newtons, but I really wanted to like Fig Newtons because the name is cool. Fig Newtons. Apple Newtons, on the other hand, awesome. Had a lot of those back in the day. Okay, and so now she's getting basically the story of this guy and his whole plans for revenge. And so obviously, so it all comes down to, yes, the death. So just as Jim Hudson had recruited superpowered individuals for his Alpha Flight, so I followed in his footsteps. Thus I created my own Omega Flight, and they have but one purpose: the death of James MacDonald Hudson, the destruction of Alpha Flight. So, pretty 80s villain. So Heather's like, well, the hell with this. I'm getting out of here. And Delphine Courtney tosses her basically across the room. And so she must be super powered because, she doesn't exactly look all that big and muscular. And I don't know that Heather Hudson is entirely like a, very small person. So they get to doing some fighting. Heather gets slaps the glasses right off her face. I like how you can see the lens coming out of the frame. That's, it's bad news when you wear glasses. She rips at Delphine Courtney's face and, oh. But as Heather makes a startling discovery, we must turn our eyes away from New York and look to an isolated hilltop in Ontario, Canada. They come. And if you can kind of tell, the silhouettes look to be Shaman and Snowbird. And after a brief advertisement from Mile High Comics, I sense the ebb and flow of ancient energies. The rest of Alpha Flight have heard Guardian's call. They will join us here shortly. I sense this also, Shaman, yet something else I sense. You are greatly troubled, old friend. Aye, you speak truth, Snowbird. I feel a great and terrible evil. The stench of death hangs heavy on the winds. Death? For whom? That I cannot say. Someone near, someone close, a friend of long standing. Perhaps you read amiss the signals. The fates struggle mightily their secrets to keep, even from adepts such as us. And this is the anniversary of your wife's death also, is it not? Yes. Yes, perhaps that is it. The ghost of ancient pain colors my thoughts today. Perhaps that is what I sense. I pray that is the case. Save your prayers, Michael T. Youngman. You may have greater need of them before this day is out. I wonder. Okay, so he's got a premonition that indeed, and as they've teased obviously in the comic, somebody is going to die. But that actually leaves things open. Somebody, a friend, well, could be any member of Alpha Flight. Could be Heather. Could even be a member of Omega Flight, because again, these people were all sort of within the same team in Department H in the Canadian government. But I think they are setting you up to say, oh, somebody's dying in this issue. Somebody's definitely dying. But we don't yet know who. Which one of our fellow Alphans will join us first? And so now we're going to get, we're going to see the different Alphans. They are spread over Canada. And that's kind of interesting that with the Avengers, you always had like a team, in one general location with a revolving membership. Fantastic Four always like at their headquarters in New York. Alpha Flight's spread out quite a bit. And so we go to see Aurora and Sasquatch. He's obviously in his human form at the moment. Aurora, is Aurora. She's kind of a pinup. That's sort of the point of that personality of hers. Remember, she has multiple personalities. And so basically they're heeding the call, and he gets in this outfit to fly with her so she can go at her kind of ultra speed without killing him, because she is a speedster. We see Puck. He's meditating, and believe it or not, this is important for this character. Gets the call and waiting for somebody to pick him up, and of course it turns out to be North Star. North Star is, of course, going to be a bit of a jerk because that's North Star, and off they go. And we're then seeing Marina. She's with Namor the Submariner. They got a thing going. She's going to get the call as well. But does she heed that call? Well, no, she does not, because her signal thing is elsewhere. So Marina is not going to be joining Alpha Flight on this adventure. They come together. North Star picks a fight with Sasquatch. He does not like the relationship with his sister. And, obviously North Star's a bit of a jerk, but on the other hand, he is aware of his sister's fragile mental state. But he's also a jerk, and he wants her attention more than he wants her to, pay attention to Walter Lankowski. And so that's going to be an issue oncoming. And we see he turns into Sasquatch, picks him up, and is just about to let him have it when Puck intervenes. And unfortunately, that sets him off, because what we discovered a couple issues ago is that the bestial sort of rage is starting to come out in the Sasquatch form, where previously it had not. And so he attacks Puck. Some unbelievably cool art here, by the way. Well, he ultimately is stopped, held at bay by Shaman. Snowbird leaps into it. Basically, they've all been summoned to deal with a major problem. And what are they doing? They're fighting amongst themselves. And that's going to be another ongoing problem with Alpha Flight, but also one that makes them very interesting. And so, but we do see that he, having been tied up, he finally calms down. What happened to me? No time for explanations now. Sasquatch, if you are back in control, we must be on our way. Guardian has need of us, and this will carry us to him. And so Shaman basically teleports the group. By the way, that's a very cool effect, the way that's done, as this sort of ring of magic descends on the group, transporting them to an awesome splash page. Holy! And we hear Guardian already in battle with Omega Flight, Alpha Flight. Glad to see you finally made it, people. Pick a partner and let's finish this fight. Your Force Blast is powerful, Guardian, but you should know by now it can't hurt me. Don't get too cocky, Lil. He knows our powers as well as we do. Brilliant observation, Wild Child. I knew you were the bright boy of the group. Save your sarcasm, flashback. None of us can fly. Only your doppelgangers can reach him. And so you get the very typical, let's do introductions, but we'll do it in dialogue. But just, let's take a look at, this is a great splash page. Alpha in the background. Foreground is Guardian. Now, Box is not introduced, but that's Box the robot. And so we get into this battle royale between Alpha and Omega. And we see, we see Guardian getting mobbed by Flashback, who can essentially bring like his own selves from different times into one place, so he can outnumber people. Aurora, North Star Aurora, jumps into action against Wild Child, who, rips her arm up. And we hear Snowbird, "Hold, wild child, you are not the only one with claws. Or the urges to use them." And, that's cool. Snowbird's a really cool character. It's going to be fun to watch her develop. But, I mean, she's essentially only been alive for 6 years. She has these powers of the gods, but coupled with, a sort of wilderness. And so she gets attacked by Diamond Lil, who is basically indestructible. Shaman jumps in, goes after her, kind of attacks her mind. And so Snowbird's in trouble. She's withering away before his eyes. Why is that? Well, because she's, she's out of her element. She's not in Canada where she has her powers. That's where her life force is sort of tied. And so already she's out of the fight. And Shaman is involved with her. So he attacks Shaman. I say he. Smart Alec attacks Shaman. And so he unfortunately grabs his medicine pouch, Shaman's medicine pouch, which is the source of his magic, and he very foolishly looks inside of it and loses his mind. You cannot look inside the medicine pouch. One's mind will not withstand it. Box, Sasquatch, this is good old school, slugfest time. Aurora still getting attacked by Wild Child. North Star is not going to have that, and grabs him, flies straight for the wall, then and slams him into the wall at full speed. Now we're going to flash back to Heather, who, a little beaten and bloodied herself, finds out she is going up against a robot. And what do we get from her? Robot, if you please, Mrs. Hudson. A very special kind of robot, built with the highest available degree of artificial intelligence and an open-ended deductive capacity that some people have likened to intuition. That, of course, was why I was given a voice and form approximating a human female. My creators were rather old-fashioned, in a chauvinistic sort of way. But if you're a robot, how can you be helping Jackson in his scheme to kill Mac? I thought robots were programmed never to harm human beings. Oh, you've been reading too much fiction, girl. Oh, how quaint. No, Mrs. Hudson, I have not been programmed with any such scruples. In fact, I have been programmed only to assist Mr. Jackson in achieving his goal, whatever that might take. And so she leaves the door open. Heather wanders out the door, back to the fight. Flashback again, going after Guardian, and Puck deals with Flashback, basically knocks him out, and Guardian, hey, thanks Judd, as he is then attacked by Box, who jumps at him, grabs him, and they go through this little doorway, passageway. Rips his helmet off. And Hudson's a little bit shocked that Roger Box is doing this to him. And if you remember from the last issue, Roger Box was trying to contact Alpha Flight to let them know what was happening. And so this is where he discovers, I am not Roger Box. I am your father. No, I am Jackson. So Jackson is controlling this robot who's beating Guardian, frankly, to death. Yes, James, surely you didn't think I would allow someone else the final pleasure. Your life is mine, James, mine, and I am going to grind it out of you. And then, when you are broken and dead at last, it will please me to do the same thing to your miserable witch of a wife. Heather, didn't you ever realize, James, didn't it ever once occur to you that I would find a way over all the long years to punish you both for what you did to me? Only one chance. Suit is shorted, but Power Pack's still alive. Got to tear out some circuits. Wait for just the right moment. Then, boom, unleashes the full power of the suit on the robot, and the feedback hits Jackson, who's not far away and wearing this control thing. You see it tears up the robot pretty damn good. And so he's like, Roger Bach's there. He's obviously tied up. He's rather pleased with this fact. Delphine Courtney is not. And so we hear from Hudson. It worked. It was a heck of a risk. I might have been killed by the blast, but then I was certain to be killed otherwise. Looks like I'm going to have to help Roger build a new box, though. I hope he's still alive. I'm glad to hear he didn't sell us out after all. He would have been ready for Alpha Flight soon if we'd been kept on by the government. Right now, however, I'd better disconnect my power pack. The suit's taken such a pounding, it'll blow any second if I don't cut it loose. I'd say I've got about 10 seconds. And then Iron Fist busts in. And so he's working to take it out. And now look at this, though. This is some awesome stuff from John Byrne. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he's talking through what he's doing. And Heather comes in. I wonder what's behind this door. Mac? Heather, no, don't come in here. And James MacDonald Hudson, Guardian, is fried right before Heather's eyes. Now, that is a finale. 1 full year of Alpha Flight. And their leader and creator, Guardian, James MacDonald Hudson, has just been killed right before Heather's eyes. I mean, it's pretty brutal. This is one of the strengths of Alpha Flight, and I've said this before, and this is what I was alluding to more than anything else. It was a team of relative unknowns in the Marvel Universe, which gave Byrne more freedom to do what he wanted to do with that team. He didn't have to worry about stepping on other toes. Still impressive, though, that he was allowed to do this. And you could look at that and say, well, this is a gimmick. They kill superheroes all the time. They come back. I think many years later, they did somehow resurrect Guardian. It's after the point that I stopped reading the book. But while I was still reading the book, he stayed gone, frankly. And they didn't use this as a gimmick to, like, he's dead, and then a few issues later he's back. But what they did do, and it still may have been a gimmick. I don't know what their sales were at this point. They could have been flagging. It could have been something shocking to get people to view. But rather than just spoiling it by, oh, look, he's alive. Instead, it becomes a major source of the storytelling in the book moving forward. As Heather deals with it and copes with it and overcomes it to the extent it could be overcome. And anyways, a very bold piece of storytelling, and only a little bit sad to me because you don't really get to know James Hudson that well. We get 12 issues of Alpha Flight. Obviously, he appeared before that in a few other books. But we get 12 issues of Alpha Flight. He's sort of in all of them. A lot of it's in flashbacks. We don't get to know the guy that well. So the idea here is not necessarily that we're going to suffer for Guardian's death. Oh, we've lost him, like you would maybe suffer for Batman or Superman's death. Characters that you knew very, very well. But we're going to experience the suffering through Heather and through the other members of Alpha Flight. And that's good storytelling. So that's Alpha Flight number 12. And One Shall Surely Die. And it's a bold piece of storytelling. And when I started reading this, it was much later in the series, and he was already gone. So I was pretty amazed when I finally got to read these, of how it happened and how they did it. And it's like, whoa, that's big time. And it's not something you necessarily expected in a comic book in 1984. But there it was. So, what do you guys think? I'd love to hear in the comments what you think of this, what you think of Alpha Flight's first year. A lot of storylines set up, a lot of conflict between characters, and then, boom, quite a finale for the first year. Let me know what you think, especially if you're an Alpha Flight fan, or if this is the first time you've really looked at any of these. I'd love to hear what you think about it. In the comments, I will respond as best I can. Until next time, though, God bless everybody. Be kind to one another. And try to have some fun. Oh, and if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you next time is it on or in? I don't know. In Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.